Welcome back, everybody. We're really excited to have you for another version of Springboard, except it's going to be a little different this year. Obviously, we're all sitting in our homes, and we're trying to come to you live and bring something a little bit different this year. And so we're really excited to welcome you to the virtual version of Springboard. And I have a really awesome panel of really close friends of mine here today that I'm really excited to introduce. Of course, I really appreciate all the time that they are dedicating to this. And, over the years, these folks have really been consistent at coming to all of our conferences. And so really excited to have three very close friends of mine joining me today. For those who don't know me, I'm Zack Fishman of Fishman PR. And I'm really excited to be your host for today. I have three really awesome guests that are going to be joining me today. So for the very first one, I have Mr. Josh Skolnick, who is the CEO of Redbox Plus and Mighty Dog Roofing, and of course, recently had some very good news in just selling monster tree service to Authority Brands. So Josh, obviously very busy man, but very happy that you had a chance to join us today. So thanks for coming. Also, we have very close friend of mine, JT Thiessen, who is the Chief Development Officer of Home Franchise Concepts. Who obviously have four brands at JT, plays a very large role in developing Budget Blinds, Concrete Craft, Tailored Living, and then also Advanically. So JT, thanks for joining us. And then lastly, we have the co-founder and Chief Development Officer of Amada Senior Care, Mr. Marcos Moura, who is also going to be joining us today. So thank you guys all so much for hopping on with us and going along the journey. I'm really excited to bring some awesome content for this year's iteration of the franchise development session of Springboard, the legendary. So, gentlemen, thank you guys all for hopping on here. I want to start with this. There has obviously been a lot of things that have happened this year, considering that we're doing this from our homes right now and we're not all in person. Obviously things have been a little crazy. And I think that, there have been a lot of furloughs that have happened, and unfortunately, the pandemic has affected a lot of people. However, as we all know, franchising does really do quite well when unemployment is high. I think that is something that we all can agree on. And a lot of the brands that you guys work with obviously operate quite well within the owner-operator model. And so what I'd love to have you guys talk about are some of the strategies that you guys have for really tailoring the perfect message to these folks that have been displaced by COVID. And I think what I want to do, we'll start with JT and then we'll go with Josh and then to Marcos, if you guys wouldn't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Zach. We basically, when the pandemic started, we immediately stopped our plan in terms of what we had for franchise development in terms of messaging and switched to now's the time message that we took across all things LinkedIn, radio, everything else, sort of trying to focus folks on, listen, you've been thinking about doing this for a long time. Now you're in jeopardy of losing your job. You've been furloughed, you've been laid off. You've got the opportunity to now do something else, do some research, focus on something. Why not now being that time, as opposed to waiting it out, going back to work and getting back on that hamster wheel and never getting off. And I think it resonated really well with our potential candidates, and we got a tremendous amount of lead flow coming in based on that campaign. So I would just say that's the first thing that we did, was really pivot the messaging to focus on those folks and make them realize there's a soft landing for them at HFC if that works out for them.
Absolutely. And, I think that there is something to be said about, the timing being now. And I think that there's a lot of talk about that. And we all are obviously connected with each other on LinkedIn, and we see all of that all the time. And so Josh, as you have three different brands under your platform as well, and I guess now two. But there obviously, I'm sure that there are a lot of different conversations that you guys had about how to really tailor the message. So how did you guys really decide was the best course of action in terms of tailoring your message to kind of get to these folks who were displaced by COVID?
Well, to dovetail what JT was saying, we obviously really shifted the messaging to now is the time, but also made sure that we were very respectful of people's fears and didn't want to lead with fear, as people were really living in a world of unknown. I will personally say that when COVID first hit the shores of the U.S. and we all didn't know what was happening, even in the service industry, we didn't know if we were going to be deemed an essential business or not. There was about a week to 2 week period that there was a lot of fear and anxiety not knowing what was going to happen. So we wanted to be very respectful to others. But once we realized that we were on good, stable ground and we were deemed an essential business, and we actually saw revenues begin to skyrocket in all of the businesses across the board. We really took an approach of, kind of walking people through the business and helping them to really understand where they can go through business ownership, and helping them to realize that, there really is a lot more to the American dream of running a business. And now that we recognize we're in a pandemic proof industry, it's one of those things I've heard a lot of people joke about now, that they're not just recession resistant, Amazon proof, and things of that nature. They're also pandemic proof. And hopefully we never have to deal with anything like this again. But again, we saw a tremendous amount of lead flow. People came through. Our franchisees opened up. And what I will say is our franchisees did a lot of the selling for us, and largely in part because we stepped in as an organization to really put our franchisees first, to make sure that they were in a good place in their business. And, when they would get on various validation calls, they would hear from franchisees as a respective candidate about what we did as an organization. But more importantly, we weren't afraid to share the good, bad, and the ugly about our business with them.
So thanks, Josh, for answering that. And I think that, we certainly have a guru as it relates to actually putting these strategies in action. And I know that obviously there's been a lot of talk about tailoring the actual message, but Mr. Marcos here obviously has quite a bit of experience in terms of, what your strategy is, even in normal times. Talk a bit about, what you're actually doing to put the message that you're trying to tailor for Amada in action, Marcos.
So I think because we're so specific to an audience, right? We go after folks that are in sales, folks that are in business development. Those folks were rocked by COVID tremendously. So a lot of them are trying to figure out what to do with their lives, right? Because their careers, their jobs were interrupted. So actually, I think my story is the fact that we just got really lucky. We got lucky that disruption made them think, I better go start a business. So I didn't actually have to change much of our message in saying something like, you got to do this now. Our leads have doubled, and without us doing a whole lot of changes. So as our leads have doubled, what we decided is we did want to show some empathy. So our email or in-mail on LinkedIn used to be a lot of, hey, I'm sure you're tired of corporate America. Why don't you come take a look at our business? And so we still say that, but we were a little softer in saying, listen, I know this has been a crazy time. It's been a crazy time for us. We hope your family is doing great. But we still believe that this is one of the best times in history to start a business. And we say, I know this sounds weird, but we firmly believe this is one of the best times. So we shifted our message to have more empathy. And I think that's an important thing to have today, is gratitude and empathy, because people are going through a lot of crap in their lives. So I think that has served us really well.
Yeah, without question. And I think that, there has been a lot of empathy that's been required from everybody. And I think that, one thing I do want to transition to, folks, because I think that, Marcos, you touched on it briefly about in-mail, and I think I want to dig into that a little bit as it relates to technology. And Josh, I'm going to start with you, and then Marcos, I'll go back to you, then JT will end with you on this. But as it relates to technology, obviously the pandemic has forced franchisors to be a little bit more dependent on technology than some may even be comfortable with. And, obviously within FranDev, that's no different. And so I'd love for you guys just to talk about some of the tools that you've used to help you do deals in 2020. I mean, anything that's really been paramount to, making a difference and ensuring that franchise development is still humming, and, why you guys actually feel that these tools are important to franchise development success overall. So Josh, we'll start with you, then to JT.
So from a technology platform, I mean, we're obviously using Zoom just like many others are, and leveraging that for the virtual meetings. Additionally, since we're not having as many in-person meetings, we're using other technology. Traction tools works really well in our business with keeping all of the remote meetings that we're having to have and events on pace. But from a franchise development standpoint, with franchisees coming through the process, first I have to say that I'm blown away at the level of success that all franchisors are having right now with leveraging virtual happy hours and discovery days and things of that nature within the industry. But for most of my businesses, there's a large outdoor piece of it as well, where we have field operations that you can't even see when you come into an office. So we've leveraged a lot of our franchisees that are local to where we might have candidates within the process to have them go out and actually spend half a day with a franchisee and get a chance to see the equipment, the operations, and the way that the business actually does perform. We're fortunate that the systems are well established and very robust, with over 200 franchise units in each system across the country. So that's a big benefit for us. But again, I've just been extremely impressed by the level of success that we've achieved through the entire process with using these virtual avenues of communicating.
Absolutely. Marcos, a question to you on that.
As far as the tools that we're using to be able to ensure we still close deals through this pandemic, we're still staying with the same thing. We use a lot of social media, mainly LinkedIn, and we're using a lot of retargeting tools to be able, once somebody learns about our brand, we're retargeting them. I got to tell you, really, the pandemic hasn't really changed the tools that we're using. I will say one thing that's been very interesting is we've always done live discovery days. So we built Amada Senior Care to over 100 locations, where every single one of those franchise partners came to a live discovery day. What we have found now is doing that virtual discovery day, that there hasn't been a whole lot of difference in the connection we have with that prospect, with their ability to conduct a discovery day. It is actually a little shorter of a discovery day, but it's been just as effective. And that has actually helped us bring people to acquire the franchise faster than ever before. It's also made it so, and I don't know if this is a technology tool, but what it's done is, by doing a virtual discovery day, when we first talk to that prospect, we're able to say, listen, here's what the process looks like. And I've got a discovery day already scheduled for, October 15th. And it's virtual, right? No tickets to buy, nothing you have to do. And so we go back from October 15th to now. Here are the things we need to do to get you to that discovery day. And something so simple like that has actually improved our ability to award franchises dramatically. So it's kind of a blessing that it forced us into that virtual discovery day.
Interesting. Deal velocity is increasing even when you don't have to go in person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very interesting. JT, the question to you on technology.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what the other guys have said in terms of, I was fortunate in that we started using Zoom before all this happened. And so we weren't trying to figure it out at the same time everybody else was. But it's been really helpful to not only tie us in closer with our candidates by being able to have more face-to-face meetings than we normally would have through the Zoom. And also we can talk about the discovery days, and we've been doing the same thing as Marcos. But also just keeping our team connected. Because we've gone to a work from anywhere environment. So in the Teams tools and things along those lines have allowed us to become much more efficient, much more connected than I think we even were when we were all sitting in the same office building, which allows us to react quicker and communicate better, not only with the candidates, but also amongst ourselves. So all of those tools, like, Fran Connect and Fran Funnel and all those things have been things that we've been using for a long time, have been extremely helpful as well. But we were pretty much set and geared up for this, and it's just been, transitioning to the virtual discovery day, which has been a big change, but a very positive one for us as well.
Absolutely.
Zach, one of the things I'll add, Zach, is, like Marco said, the speed to transaction and the time that it takes someone to build a level of confidence, get to discovery day, is drastically shortened. But I think we've also seen a large part of that is in part that through all of the meetings we're having on a regular basis through the development process, we're now doing them on camera through Zoom with people. So we're able to build a connection much faster. Whereas prior to COVID, a lot of people were uncomfortable with getting on camera, where now people just get up about their day and, regardless if they're still in their PJs or whatever they're doing, they're jumping on camera with you. And we've seen plenty of embarrassing moments with people, but we've also had a lot of great laughs. But it's, it's something that I think the connections are built a lot faster than just a voice over the phone and maybe a video they see of you online, or a social media post, or an article that they read about you. They're actually physically, they feel like they're speaking directly to you as you're doing that on camera.
Yeah, without question. I think that there is something to be said about the deal velocity and the fact that it's increasing, and people feel like that because we're just getting more used to it. I think it is really what it comes down to. And, it all is very, very interesting. So, folks, what I do want to transition to a little bit is something that probably a lot of people are wondering. And, as we know, you guys are all fantastic business people. Everybody and your mother has been telling you the cash has definitely been king during COVID. And so you're really trying to conserve as much as you can. And so because of this, franchisors, big and small, have really had to be really methodical about how they're really using their budget. And I think that what would be really helpful for folks is just for you guys to go through some low cost options that you have that you've used during COVID to generate leads, and why you guys really feel like that it's working. Because overall everybody's trying to look for the cheapest and best option, but I think it would be good to hear from the three of you. And so JT, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we found that we've put a lot of work into Facebook and trying to figure out how to make that work in terms of actually getting leads that aren't tire kickers and are serious about it. And it's worked out really well, actually. We've done a bunch of deals this year just purely based on people reaching out to us based on Facebook placements and Facebook ads. And so that's been something that has been relatively inexpensive, but has been pretty effective for us. Also, pay-per-click is something we've invested in heavily, and we've had some great results, people coming in that way as well. I think one thing that we did was reinforce our referral program over and over again, because referrals, there's nothing cheaper than getting a referral lead, obviously, because it doesn't cost you anything to get it, and you only pay out something. At least we pay out something to the franchisee if that candidate actually becomes a franchisee. So it costs you nothing to try. And we've had 35 deals this year that have come purely from franchisees that have reached out and said, hey, my buddy's laid off, or so-and-so was at the same company with me and now they're being furloughed and we should talk to them about getting into the business. And so we've had tremendous success with that. We do pay cash out to the franchisees, and we take them on a big 4-star trip every year as well to I think it's Costa Rica. If we can never travel again, we're going there this year. So so that generates a lot of leads, and there's nothing better or easier, in my opinion, than closing a referral lead, because you've got somebody behind the scenes that's helping you make your case as far as the candidate goes. So we've been really heavily focused on that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Marcos, we'll go to you on this. I know you have some opinions here.
So I'd say two things that I think could be huge for franchisors. And talking about the empathy, listen, I know there's a lot of people who are listening to this that it has been horrible, right? It has just been the worst time for you to be in business ever, and our hearts go out to you. And I'll go back to saying how lucky we were that we are in home care. Home care is essential. Home care continued. In fact, it boomed during COVID. So that's just pure luck. So I think a couple things that this tells us in this pandemic is it tells us that if there was ever a time for you to pivot your lead generation into audience building, I think it's still now. Because what happens when you have an audience that's often listening to you, you could take that audience through how to get through this pandemic. So for example, I think your emails and your communication to your lead pool, if you have 20,000 leads, 5,000 leads, or 100,000 leads, I think your communication right now shouldn't be so much, hey, open an Amada Senior Care, open a Monster Tree. It ought to be, hey, let me give you resources to get through this pandemic and become an entrepreneur. For example, why not start promoting a webinar? This is free to do, by the way. Start promoting a webinar where you're going to bring in an expert from FranFund, from BowFly, from the SBA, to talk about entrepreneurs, about how to secure money right now to start a business, not your business, just a business, and promote that webinar over these next 4 or 5 weeks. So set the webinar for October 10th. Give yourself some time to promote that webinar, and come on and give. Don't even pitch your brand. Just give the audience resources that's going to make them feel like you care about them. Again, empathy. And that activity there, I promise you, I bet if you did that, you would bring in people into your pipeline and you wouldn't spend a dime, because they're already in your pipeline. You just haven't treated them as an audience. You're treating them like discardable leads. That's, I think, something you could do right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I think that's a great idea. And Josh, any other ideas or anything else you guys have used as it relates to lower cost options to help get some solid leads to get across the finish line?
Well, first for us, I mean, fortunately, up until the business Monster Tree Service sold on Friday, money did grow in trees. So leads weren't a concern of what they would cost for us. Just kidding. In all seriousness, Marcos brings up a good point about, hosting a webinar and leveraging that to really, bring people in, but not pitch your business and just give them access to information. That's actually one of the directions that we take in our businesses, in our service businesses, and the way that we market to our customers is we use an educational direction where we want to build ourselves up as an authority within the industry. And then when a consumer has a need for a service we offer, that's when they dial to buy from us. And so it's the same type of idea that Marcos is talking about, just with franchise candidates, to improve the level of confidence that they have in you as an individual. We naturally do in my businesses as a result of the overall investments. They're much larger investments than the average franchise system is. We do work with a lot of brokers, but the most effective that's worked with us over the last 120 days has been a lot of referrals from franchisees. We've just closed 3 deals just in the last week, which were referrals out of existing franchisee locations that they gave to us, friends, family, whatever it was, as far as the relationship goes.
I'd like to dig into this a little bit, guys, as it relates to the referrals. Is there anything that you guys did or any strategies that you have? Because obviously it is really the cheapest lead that you could possibly have, and typically the most highly validated. Is there any type of strategies that, maybe any of you guys would have as it relates to referrals that people could have as a takeaway at all? JT, we can start with you on that because you were the first person to bring it up there.
Yeah, well, for us, it was always, there has to be enough in it for them to be motivated to think about, hey, I got to go out and drum up leads and make it worthwhile to do so. And so, we'll pay anywhere between $20,000 to that franchisee for that referral lead based on the brand and how many territories they buy. And then, like I said, we take the whole group, everyone that does a referral in a year, we'll take them to Hawaii or Mexico or Costa Rica or something like that, and just have a celebration of helping us grow the business. And people, it's funny because they can take that money and buy their own trip, but they're all super focused on going on this trip. And we send videos out and remind them on a weekly basis, remind them of the referral program and why wouldn't you want to help someone come in. We also allow our franchisees to, because they do have 4 brands, they can actually refer across brands, so they can a Budget Blinds franchisee can refer someone in who becomes a Concrete Craft franchisee as well. And so we try to leverage as much of that as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that franchisees are definitely your best salespeople if you have the opportunity to do so. And so I just wanted to hit on that briefly. And before we went on to the next question, just have one of you guys dig into that, because I think that referrals has been something that's been really, really important right now, especially if you have the ability to do that. And it's why validation is very important, folks. One thing I want to dig into again, guys, and I know that we discussed this, I don't think that obviously any of us really knew that we were going to be doing Discovery Days virtually this year, but it has forced us to really, really change the way that we've thought about the franchise development process and really the sales process overall. Is there any other material changes that you guys made to your Fran Dev process, and, why did you guys do it? And, why do you think it was successful? And I think that what we'll do is we'll start with Marcos first, and then we'll go to Josh and then JT.
Gosh, other than Discovery Day, we really haven't changed a whole lot. We talked about the empathy before, but I just think we've been lucky. We haven't had to change much other than the live Discovery Day. It's kind of a bummer, huh? I got nothing. I got nothing on that one.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see if I'll go 0 for 2. JT, what about you?
Yeah, we've done a couple things a little bit differently. Obviously, the virtual Discovery Day, we used to always do them in person. We would fly them out to our office in California and make a big deal out of it, pay for their tickets and all those sort of things. So obviously, you had to be at the end of the process. You had to be extremely qualified before we're going to spend money doing that. The interesting shift with the virtual Discovery Days is trying to avoid people getting on earlier than they should have. because there's no cost and there's, they just were like, oh yeah, I see you have Discovery Day next week. I'd like to be on that. And really, and we let this happen a little bit at first. We're like, yeah, sure, the more the merrier. And then what I realized is they're getting through Discovery Day, which should be a closing event, and they're not ready to close yet. And so then they just kind of bop around for a month or so until we can get them done. And so we've had to dial back on that and say, hey, listen, no, the process is the process, and you still got to stay on track. And if you're not ready for Discovery Day, whether it's virtual or in person, you're not doing it. The nice side effect about that too, though, is that we do get a lot more spouses that come in for the virtual Discovery Days, and more so than we normally would get in person. And I think that's really helping get people over the top, because when you're, as you know, when your spouse is excited about it, that makes everything a lot easier in terms of getting that deal done. We've also started talking financing a lot earlier than we normally would in the process, just especially if they're going through SBA, because SBA is slow right now, and making sure that they understand that we need to do that on a parallel track to you investigating the business, assuming you're going to have a business at the end of this. It may not be ours, maybe someone else's, but let's get everything moving so that we're not sitting and waiting on the SBA at the end of this thing. And then one other thing that we've done too, though, is that we do send a tangible package out to everybody for Discovery Day ahead of time with t-shirts and tumblers, and I have a chocolate covered strawberries delivery that shows up in the middle of the day and for the family to enjoy while dad's stealing the Wi-Fi, and we try to have some fun with it. But people still really love the fact that I'm touching something, I'm getting something. We're putting, if it's a budget blinds Discovery Day, we're putting some sampling in there that they can actually touch and feel. If it's table living, we're putting epoxy samples and floor samples and things like that, so that it's not just something they're seeing on a screen. They can actually touch it and feel it along as we go as well, which is something that they don't get because they're not doing it in person. So I think those are the main things that we've been doing.
Yeah, because I think that, one thing that I do hear a lot in the sales process, especially when it's selling franchises, is that kind of enacting the five senses is really important. And obviously it is, really hard to do that sometimes when it's virtual. And I think that that's a really great way to meld together the two, is to be able to have them be able to touch and feel something, while also having the process be, quite a bit easier for them and really for you, and less costly for both sides as well. So definitely really great advice there.
Yeah, when you get people
go ahead, Jay.
and they're all wearing like the hat that you sent them out already, like they're already halfway there. If they're already wearing the gear, you're in a good spot. So
got the brand evangelists, and you didn't even need to have them come to California. So it's definitely a good thing. So Josh, anything else that you guys have changed as it relates to the sales process aside from virtual Discovery Days? And if that is the central thing, is there anything that you've moved around in terms of when you're doing certain things, like JT and Marcos mentioned?
Well, JT covered a lot of items, and I think there's a lot of great takeaways from all of the things that he said. There's even a few notes that I took myself that I'd like to add to our process that JT mentioned. But I think the big thing for us is that number one, we've seen a lot more husband and wife couples participating in the Discovery Day process, since it is virtual, especially when people have kids at home. It's very difficult for both to get away. I know, especially in my own household, it's very hard for my wife and I to find coverage for our kids. We don't have a lot of family that lives near us that we can dump them off to, and finding someone to take them overnight is a little bit harder. The biggest one for us, the number of people that we can have attend. As I had said earlier, we do have an outside component to taking people out in the field and actually showing them hands-on the products we offer, the services we do, and everything of that nature. So we typically would try to cap our Discovery Days around 5 to 7 buying groups. And we found that we had the best success rate when we kept it around that size. But we've actually been able to increase that to 10 to 15, and we've still been able to bring very quality candidates through that process. I put a lot of weight and decision making in the development team's hands, and really give them the guidelines of what we're looking for in an ideal candidate, and they know who's the right fit for us and who isn't. So they really do a great job through the process to make sure somebody is ready to be at that discovery day. One of the things that I'll add on top of this that wasn't a change to it, but something that we just do that really helps to make sure that this is more of a confirmation day for our attendees as opposed to a discovery day, is that I personally do a 30-minute one-on-one call with everyone attending at least a week to 10 days beforehand to ensure they are prepared. And that's sort of the final approval for them. And I do give them a pretty good gut check and make sure that they're ready to, show up and that they're checking off just the final few boxes of, meeting our team, whether it is in person or virtually, and then making sure they're comfortable with the products and services that we offer. All of their other questions need to be answered before they get there. Swag is a big thing. We do have a big care package that arrives 48 hours prior to the discovery day kicking off, now that it is virtual. As JT said, it's amazing. You log on to that virtual happy hour, you see one or two wearing the gear, and then by the following day going through the virtual event, it's like more and more people. And by the time you finish and you move into the closing session, it's like everyone's wearing the gear and they're talking about when I'm in the business and when I launch my business and when I order my equipment. And so it makes the close very, very easy. But I think that has a lot to do with just not the discovery day process. It's the entire discovery process and what you do with those people up until you get to that point that makes your job a lot easier. If you are not keeping people accountable through the process up to a discovery day, then they're not going to be accountable during the discovery day, and it's going to make your job very difficult to get somebody closed if they're the right fit.
Without question. I think that's one thing that I have heard a lot of people struggle with is kind of the idea of doing the discovery day in person is that you have that captive audience. And I think that there has to be other ways for folks to have that, whether it's empathy with Marcos or whether it's sending something physically, or it's actually keeping them in ensuring and putting accountability into the sales process. I think all of those things are really important takeaways. And speaking of those, if you haven't, folks, if you are listening, please take out, your Evernote or the notes on your computer. Or if you're old fashioned, like some people I know, take out the good old pen and paper because we're going to go through with some takeaways here. And I want to have 2 nuggets from each of you, just takeaways that people can write down and really put actionably into their Fran-Dev process right now. And so, Marcos, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go JT and then Josh. So, Marcos, any 2 nuggets that you have for me as it relates to franchise development that people can actionably do right now?
So I think the good news is that people were already dissatisfied with their jobs. They were already living in quiet desperation in their cubicles, trying to figure out what the next step was. That was the world before COVID. I think today it is even worse. The desperation, I've got to get out of Dodge. I hate my boss. I got to leave a legacy. That has been put in the forefront more than ever before. And so what's weird is if you're struggling in your development activities today, know that the opportunity, I think, has gotten better than it was before because of that. However, I think what you should be doing is look at this as a long-term game, right? And so much of lead generation is run by salespeople. Salespeople don't think long-term. They want to close a deal. They want to get a lead and close the deal. They're not thinking about your business in a 10-year span. So, and if you're the salesperson, we love you, right? But we know that's how you are. So somebody in your company needs to be looking at this as a long-term, like where is this company going to be 10 years from now, not 2 months from now or 6 months from now? And when you look at your business 10 years from now, that's when you can calm down a little bit and start looking at who exactly do I want to have in my franchise? Who are the people who need to hear my message? And you start attracting those people. And it might be that, let's say your entire budget is spent on brokers, which is great, or your entire budget is spent on shows and portals. My big push to you is please start taking some of that budget. If it's $500 a month, if it's $1,000 a month, whatever you can afford, and start going after your ideal audience of people that you want to change their lives, who need your brand, who will be amazing entrepreneurs with your brand. Because if you start spending that in the next 12 months, in the next 2 years, long-term, that audience will respond to you and you'll start closing better entrepreneurs. Your item 19 will look better over the next 10 years. Your validation will be better. So try as much as possible to take a much longer view of your business, because we're all in this for big exits, right? We want to be able to make people successful. We want to be able to make big money. We want to leave legacies. And that doesn't happen in a month span. It happens in a 3, 4, 5, 10-year span.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And I certainly agree. I think that I can be a little bit short term sometimes too, and I try my best to be medium and long term as well. And so that's good advice that even I should be listening to. Speaking of big exits, I think we're going to have Josh go next here as it relates to any 2 nuggets that you have on the franchise development process that you think people can take away from the session here.
Yeah, so the first one that I'm going to look at is really how to continue to improve and grow your overall franchise system, because at the end of the day, all we have is one thing to sell, and that's real estate. And once territories get sold, we're very limited on where we can continue to go to drive growth. So one of the things that we do in all of our systems is we set a quarterly goal to sell one of the lowest performing franchisees locations within our business. So we actively drive to replace lowest performers on a monthly basis, and we set a minimum goal of 1 per quarter. Sorry, not monthly, quarterly, and we do, and we'll reach out to all of our networks, whether that be consultants. We'll invest in social media. We'll look for referrals from other franchisees within that market, but we want to continue to raise the bar so that year over year. One of the things that we do year over year in all of our item 19s is that all of the buckets of average revenues, high, medium, median, and low, continue to grow year over year. And it's largely in part because of that way that we address low performers. The other one is in development, it's okay to say no. Understand that you are developing a long-term relationship. And one of the early mistakes that I made in franchise development is, as an emerging brand, back when I had a few franchisees in the business, I was anxious to sell more. All I wanted to do is I would go to events like Springboard and other franchising events, and I would see these guys that had 100, 150, 200 franchise units, and I wanted to be like them. And I was in a rush to get there, and I wanted instant gratification. And it's like you want to just take anybody, and then it's that 80-20 rule. You spend 80% of your time supporting 20% of your business that's doing nothing for you because they're just a pain in the ass, to put it frankly. And so at the end of the day, we're very selective, and I encourage everyone to approach the franchise development process not as a salesperson, but as an educator. Educate your candidates on what your brand has to offer and what they can achieve within your brand. And more importantly, allow your franchisees, through validation and the individual communications that a candidate makes with those franchisees, do the selling for you, and you'll have no problem closing franchisees. And one day you'll be running a system with hundreds of franchise units across the country.
Excellent advice as well. Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate it. JT, we are going to finish with you for the 2 nuggets for franchise development.
Awesome. Well, Josh just took my number 1 nugget. It was exactly what I had written down. And we just actually went through this yesterday where we had to say no to a candidate. And quite honestly, went along with that, we had to say no to the broker about 3 times because they couldn't understand why we wouldn't take his candidate, and it just wasn't the right fit. And you can do 1 bad apple can undo 10 good ones that you've got in there, and they can really especially if you're an emerging brand, you're a newer brand, you have to have people that are all in. They understand that it's their role is going to be not only running the business, but helping you grow the business from a validation standpoint. And you've got to have people that are willing to run through walls to help you grow in that way. One thing that we did with some of our smaller brands as we were growing them, and now we do that for all of our brands, in terms of validation, is that we host a weekly conference call. Where we get the franchisees every year to sign up at convention. We just put a big board up with all the weeks of the year, and they can put their name on there. There's nothing really in it for them except that they can give back and help out. And we host that call once a week, and we invite candidates that are at the right point in the process where they can get on that call. We tee it up and then we hang up. And there's no agenda. We don't tell them what to say. We don't listen to it. And they can just have a one place every week where they can chat with each other. And then we have a third party that actually pulls it and records it and puts it on a website, so that we don't have our hands on it at all. We can do that. And people tell me all the time, it's like the most helpful thing that you can do. It doesn't run the franchisees into the ground with so many validation calls like you will if you're a newer brand and you only have so many franchisees that can make those calls. And then people now, they tell me, I've listened to 15 calls this week on my way to and from work. And I got to work and I was hating work because I just listened to this franchisee that's so happy. And on my way home, and it really helped sort of solidify the message in that regard. So if you don't have a lot of franchisees, I'd recommend setting up something like that so that you can help with the validation as well and make a single point of contact. It's also nice when those other folks get on those calls, they help sort of sell each other, which is really nice as well. And when we get to discovery days, people are like, oh, I know you, I've been on 4 calls with you. And it really kind of already creates that familial feeling amongst other people. I guess the last thing I throw out there is, especially in this day and age, I think people are going to want to know, what did you do to help your franchisees get through COVID, the pandemic? It's not about, what's your business like and all those sort of things. The first question you're going to get, I get from a lot of people, is what did you guys do differently? How have you supported the franchisees? What methods or things have you done that maybe hurt your P&L because it added additional expense or it cut revenue or something along those lines? But it was the right thing to do to help make sure that we were able to get people through this and thriving and staying open. And because that's really, at the end of the day, that's what people are going to look at and say, this, I want to be the kind of organization that was willing to take a step back and financially or whatever it might be to make sure that we were going to survive and thrive. And so I think it's really important to be able to clearly chat about that and have some clear examples in terms of what you've been able to do to help people get through this.
Excellent advice as well. I think that we chose wisely when we chose the 3 of you to do this panel. So we obviously really appreciate the time that you guys have really put into this. And I even got to have some takeaways on this. So thank you guys so much for that, obviously. So folks, I want to leave some time for some Q&A here. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat here. And then we will be able to have all of us answer anything live for you all. Any questions that I have from the peanut gallery here? It seems like that we have a lot of questions that are kind of going through along the side of the chat here, folks, and we have quite a lot. It looks like, I think I have my count. We have about 10 that I've been tracking along the side here, maybe 11 because I think another one just came in. Thank you guys all so much, by the way, for bearing with us. JT did an incredible job not actually breaking the straight face and kind of keep on trucking. Lane somehow came off of mute. And as you guys all heard, he was in the middle of his daily rap session that he probably tells nobody about. So really, really happy that JT was able to keep the straight face there. But we do have a couple questions, folks. And the one that I want to start with is actually a really good one. And I know that Marcos actually answered it briefly. It's from Allison Grimm from Frios. And she asks, what is the best way to pass on a prospect? And I know that Marcos, you kind of mentioned that briefly, but Josh or JT, anything that you guys would want to add in terms of best ways to say no to a prospect at all?
Yeah, I'll go. I don't know if anyone else got any ideas. I think it's really, obviously you want to do a soft takeaway and perhaps suggest something that maybe they'd be a better fit for and why. So that, especially if it's a broker lead that you've got in, you don't want them to get upset about the whole process and things that are going along there. So maybe potentially suggesting that maybe you're a better fit for something a little bit different, and referring them out to someone else, or just going back to the broker and explaining casually, why it's not a good fit. And there's never an easy way to say no to somebody, unfortunately, but I think that you have to sort of say, hey, listen, our main goal is for you to be successful. And we don't want to put you into something where it's not the right fit, where you're not going to be successful, because neither one of us are going to be happy down the road. And I think people understand that and appreciate that if you can just be open and honest about it.
Absolutely. I think that that's very fair. And so there are many, many others that we have from the crowd here. And what I do want to ask as well, and it's actually a pretty interesting one. And why don't we start with you, Josh, on this? Are you guys seeing any shifts in how your interested candidates are from a demographic standpoint compared to pre-COVID? And this comes from Joe Malmuth from Batteries Plus.
So, but let me go back real quick to the previous question. So I'll give you an example. We just had, as far as letting people know that they're not the right fit for us, hopefully you're getting that way before they come to discovery day. Now, if they come to Discovery Day and they're not a fit, then it's a little more awkward, of course. But what we've been doing is we partnered with a great broker. And what we do now is we say, hey, this is not a fit for you. Or if they say this is not a fit for them, we're then doing a warm transfer to a broker. We say, hey, we've got a great gentleman. His name is Chris, actually, broker that we're working with. And he'll be able to introduce you to other brands. And in fact, we had a lead that wasn't right for us that just acquired a 3-pack of Stretch Labs. And it was awesome because the entrepreneur was really excited. They acquired a business that they're excited about. And they came and they thanked us for that referral. And then we have a split going on with that broker. The broker was really excited because they got a warm transfer. I think it's been awesome. I would highly recommend for you guys to connect with a really good broker that you can refer business to. And then Zack, what was the other question?
The other question was in relation to, are you guys seeing any shifts in who your interested candidates are from a demographic standpoint compared to pre-COVID?
I'm not it because we go after such a specific demographic. So I haven't seen a shift, and I'm really not interested in a shift. So I stay with my audience. So let's go to the other guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, how about you?
Zack, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. We lost you for a
Perfect.
second, but you're back.
Yeah, not a problem. What's the question? What do you want me to hit on there?
Well, as it relates to kind of talking a bit about, if the interested candidates you guys have changed demographically now as compared to pre-COVID, I think it's a really interesting idea just because, the landscape have certainly changed. So has that changed for you guys in terms of who's coming to you?
I think the biggest shift we've seen is just how open-minded people have been. It's no secret the businesses I'm in are not the most sexiest businesses. They're dirty service industries. And I do see that people are becoming a lot more open-minded in the approach that they're taking and looking at kind of their next leap of faith in getting into something. But I am seeing a major increase in the level of confidence of all the candidates, just as they've adjusted to the new normal of working remotely and being from home. They really like that freedom, and there's actually a level of fear of what's going to happen once they have to go back to the office. So they're motivated to be in business for themselves.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. And hey, I think, and then somebody called it out in the chat, I think the trees are sexy. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Money grows on trees, brother.
Exactly. That's what we like to say. So another question that we had from the crowd here is actually, we'll actually go into the virtual discovery days for a little bit. Have you guys been finding that even with virtual discovery days, your prospective franchisees still want to meet in person? And I think that on top of that, what are you guys doing to help ensure that the fit is good beyond just financial and or experience? So let's have JT, let's have you talk about this one, because this is kind of from two different people, Don Kane and then Marcy Kleinsasser, my close friends.
Yeah, I think the only piece we're missing, quite honestly, from the virtual discovery day to when we used to meet in person is kind of the breaking of bread, which is actually the best part, to get to know people really when you sit down and have a glass of wine with them, and dinner after discovery day, you really find out who's who in a lot of cases sometimes. And I think we're missing that component a little bit, and I'd like to get back to that. But for the most part, I think people really appreciate the fact that we're willing to do this. What we've done now is we've broken our discovery day into 2 days back to back, so that it's not a 7-hour discovery day all in one day, which just wears people out. So we kind of do high level, big picture stuff the first day, and then get specifics on the particular brands the second day. And I found that it's worked very well. I think that we're finding people are willing to move forward much quicker. I do the one thing that Josh does as well too, is I have a very deep, in-depth phone call with them, or a Zoom call now, prior to discovery day, because the one thing we lose is a little bit of that one-on-one contact that you get sometimes when you can pull someone aside or you're sitting next to them at dinner. And so I do a lot more with that to make sure that we're really connecting as best we can prior to them getting to discovery day on that day. I feel like the hardest part really about these virtual discovery days, I don't know how everyone else feels, is that everyone goes on mute. And then usually where you've got like spontaneous conversation coming about, or people laughing and all these things, and it's just quiet. And I'm trying to pull questions out, and everyone's afraid to go off on mute. And so if anyone's got a solution for that, I'd love to hear it. So.
Absolutely. I think that's thank you for that, because I think a lot of people were really wondering, how to actually maintain that personable touch without, being there in person. And I want to transition to something else that you said earlier, JT, about how Facebook was working well for you. We got a lot of questions from many people in the crowd that really wanted to make sure we got this answered. What specific strategy is working? Is it display ads? Is it organic? Or if you wouldn't mind digging into that a little bit, just because a lot of people are wondering. We have Chelsea, Nick, Athletic Republic, and Mr. Rick Porter all wondering the same question here.
I've got a great marketing team that does a lot of that stuff, so I don't want to pretend like I know exactly what they're doing, but I know we're doing a lot with organic. We're doing some paid, and then a lot of boosted posts that seem to be working really well. If something's tracking organically, then we'll go boost it, and that seems to be very successful in terms of the franchise development. I think one thing we were doing prior to the COVID was very sort of light and fluffy, like, do you want to change your life, and do you want to be in charge of yourself, and that kind of stuff on Facebook. And I think what we've done that's been really effective is getting more real, showing people on the job, showing people in the vans, showing people having success with the business, and people are relating to that better because they're really trying to picture themselves in the business, and we can't do that as well without with the virtual discovery days and things like that we're doing. So I think that's also really helped us.
Absolutely. Fair enough. I mean, that's definitely good for people to know. So I'm happy we got that answered here. So we got a couple more folks, and we got about 2 more minutes. So I'm going to go for one more question here, one for each. So Josh, this one's for you. On your goal to sell one lowest performer per quarter, I imagine they are likely in the red. How do you price that business? And have you found a trend in terms of the most successful ways to sell? And this is from Michael Tilbrook from Lunchbox Wax.
Yeah. So the lowest performers we're looking to sell on a quarterly basis aren't always someone that's losing money or in the red. It can be someone that's just an underperformer that is in a very strong market that should be doing substantially better in the business than what they are. So we work with them to get them out. But from a positioning on the price standpoint, typically an underperforming franchisee would like to get out and recover as much of the initial investment that they made into the business. But oftentimes they're willing to walk away from a portion of what they've personally injected into it up front. And, we've seen some where they'll exit for recouping enough to cover whatever they might still own on an SBA loan that they use to fund the business, and willing to take a loss in that 401k injection or whatever they use for that initial cash injection they made into the business. But not all of them are sold at a loss. I mean, many of them are actually sold at either a break even or a little bit of a profit. And the story is very easy to tell to a new candidate coming through when you connect them with the right people in similar markets that are doing substantially better within the business. It's very easy once they connect directly. And we're not afraid to connect the new buyer with that existing franchisee either, because it's easily understood in a very short period of time why that person is underperforming. It's never put back on the system or the support or anything that we've done. I always say it's, a franchisee failing one of our businesses never for a lack of our trying to make them successful. We always put 110% in. But like I said earlier, if you don't put a focus on getting underperformers or pain in the ass franchisees out of your business, you're going to spend 80% of your time working on the franchisees that generate 20% of the revenue for your business. And then the other group of people that are driving 80% of your revenue are not getting what they need to continue to rise tides in all boats. So definitely something I would strongly focus on doing in your business.
Excellent advice. And gentlemen, that is all the time that we have for the Q&A. A couple things at the bottom of the house, everybody, before we sign on to our mentor pods here. And for the folks who did not get their questions answered, that's Lori and Scott Abbott and Matt Kelton and Christian and Natalie Weaver. We will make sure that we will obviously get those answered to you in a one-off. A couple notes before we sign on here. You guys have gotten 8 million emails, and I know that Lane and Mr. Fishman have said as much, but Amelia just sent you guys an email on behalf of Lane. Please make sure that you sign on to the new link for the Mentor Pods, since that is our biggest session, and we have had multiple people link it in the chat here as I'm speaking. Please go in and log on to the other Zoom link for that. again, folks, please be patient with us. This is going to take some time. There are a lot of you. There's over 450 people that have signed up. Some were even doing it live because they loved what we all had to say so much that they just decided that they were going to hop on for the rest of the day here. So please be patient. We are going to have absolutely phenomenal mentors for you all. A lot of people have dedicated their very precious time to be helpful for as many of you guys as possible. At the end of the day, as I've been harping on this entire session, Springboard is really meant to bring actionable insights for all of you all. And I hope that you guys have a page full of notes that you guys are going to be able to take back and put into your business tomorrow. So while we are going here, please enjoy some awesome videos of our Springboard family. As Lane said at the top of the house here, we have a couple surprises for you guys as it relates to people showing off their TikTok skills. So thanks again to my wonderful panelists, JT, Josh, and Marcos, and thank you guys all for listening as well.